Hey folks, welcome to the Phillies Talk Podcast presented by Team Toyota. Corey and Jim here with you on the morning of Game 1 of the World Series, Phillies Astros in Houston. That's where we are. Minute Maid Ballpark. It's going to be Aaron Nola taking on Justin Verlander. Jim, what a ride this has been. This has all kind of materialized for the Phillies in the span of a month. You know, you think back to like 6 weeks ago, there were questions, is this team going to fade again in September? Is there going to be another collapse? And yet they've steamrolled through the playoffs similarly to the Astros. The guys are feeling loose. They're feeling confident. The Astros are heavily favored in this series, but the Phillies just feel like they can beat anybody right now.
Yeah, you mentioned it's all materialized in the last month. It's almost like a month to the day they were swept in Wrigley Field. It was, you thought, I remember writing one night, like, are they going to blow this thing? Because they had the wild card lead, but it was only like a game or two here and there. And then they lose 3 in a row in Wrigley Field. And it's not looking good. It's not a good time for a 3-game losing streak. And they go into Washington and, win. They win 3 or 4 there, or 4 or 5.
3 or 4.
3 or 4. So that was a big, series to get kind of straightened up again against a team that you should. And then they came to Houston and locked it up that first game. And now they're back in Houston. But, the remarkable run is what we've seen the last 11 games, 9-2. So many clutch things have happened. I mean, fortuitous things have happened. They've gotten bounces. They've gotten breaks. But they've earned it. Bryce Harper created a memory that will last generations in Philadelphia with that 8th inning home run in the championship series clincher. And it was just another one of those moments here in October where it made you think, wow, we're watching something special here. This was a team that squeaked into the playoffs on the 6th seed, a seed that didn't even exist a year ago, a playoff spot that didn't even exist. They only took 5 teams in each league to the playoffs last year. So they squeak into the last playoff spot on 87 wins, which the number that astounds me is they have 24 fewer wins than the top seed in the National League. 24 fewer wins. That's like a remarkable month, but it just, and I've spoken with you about this, and I spoke with it about Kyle Schwarber on Wednesday. He agreed, like, you got to get in and get hot. And the way you get in is, as he talked about, was it's a 162-game season, and you don't have to blitz it. You have to manage it. And that's what you have to do. You have to manage it because it's baseball, and there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs that, just really test your soul and make you wonder. But you got to manage that 162-game season. And, when I think of this 162-game season, I mean, you had a guy in Alec Boehm. You weren't even sure if he was going to make the team out of spring training. You weren't sure if he was going to recover from a 3-hour night on, I think it was April 11. And he does, and he blossoms. And at times he hits into 3-hole, and he becomes a major contributor. You had a rookie shortstop who opened the season at third base and then went to the minor leagues and then filled in at shortstop and filled in at second base, I should say, and then was so good you had to put him at shortstop and move on from the veteran there because the rookie was so good. You had injuries. You had 2 really brilliant starters. You had a closer come back from Tommy John surgery and have 3 spectacular months, and then get it all back after a little blip late in the season, get it all back in the month of October. You had Jose Alvarado go to the minor leagues and come back full of confidence and just pitching like an ace out of the bullpen. So, and then of course you had the managerial change, and this Rob Thompson takes over, this really humble guy who is just interested in helping his team win ball games, and all that happens. And just a crazy, improbable ride. But going back to what Schwarber said, you got to manage the 162 game season, and then you got to get in, and then you got to take off. And that's what we're seeing. And that's what we've seen through 3 rounds of the playoffs. And we'll see if it can continue here. They've reached the top, and now we'll see if they can plant a flag.
Yeah, Jim, you just referenced a bunch of different players. It's almost like, to a man, almost everybody on this team has had their own character arc this season that has led to this point. A lot of stuff is going around, footage from like press conferences in the days following Joe Girardi's firing, where Dave Dombrowski was asked, do you think this team can make the playoffs? Why do you think this team can make the playoffs? You remember Joe Girardi in his first public comment after he was let go said that he's praying that the Phillies make the playoffs. Well, they've done more than just that. They won 19 fewer games in the regular season than did the Astros. And as you mentioned, 24 fewer than the Dodgers. But since June 1st, including the playoffs, the Phillies are 75-48, which is a 99 win pace. So since the first 2 months of the season, pretty much, they've played like an upper echelon team. If it was a 99 win team in the World Series, nobody would be saying anything. That's more like the team that they've been lately. One of the many players who had one of those character arcs this season is Aaron Nola. He came into the year and there were questions again about how he was going to be at the end of the year. Is he going to hold up in September? Kind of reminds me of like the conversation circulating around the Sixers, where it's like nobody cares about what happens in the regular season, what happens in the playoffs. With Aaron Nola, it's like, okay, he can give you a bunch of quality starts in May and June. Talk to me in September. Well, he delivered in September. He's continued to deliver in October. Had the one stumble last week in the NLCS against the Padres. That was 9 days ago. So Nola will be going on 9 days rest when he takes on Justin Verlander tonight. Verlander, another guy who has had an extended time off between starts, one of the best in the business, a future Hall of Famer. Verlander gave the Phillies lineup plenty of credit, said it's one of the best lineups in baseball. They're not the kind of lineup you can go through just using one game plan, that they hit many different pitch types. It seems like it's going to be a great pitching matchup. When you look at the way these teams are built, both of them have horses in the number 1 spot in the rotation and the number 2 spot in the rotation, guys who go deep into games, guys who can, pitch you 7 innings in a playoff start. The Astros' biggest advantages would seem to be in games 3 and 4 when they have the starting pitching, the better starting pitching situation with Javier and with Lance McCullers compared to Ranger Suarez in a potential bullpen game for the Phillies. But, 106 wins, 87 wins over the course of 8 days, that doesn't really matter.
No, and a short series, anything can happen. It's about who gets hot and who plays well. And, we've seen it. The Phillies beat a favorite Braves team. Honestly, the Braves team that looked like a juggernaut because they got good pitching and they got, you look at Ranger Suarez, even the game they didn't get good pitching, he gets out of 2 bases loaded jams. So within that, he had 2 huge outs and could have changed the series. So you got to make plays. Defense with the Phillies always looms in the back of your mind. In a playoff series, you can't give extra outs. And by that, you got to play good defense. And you can't give a lot of extra base runners. You can't walk people because you start walking people against the Houston Astros, and Yordan Alvarez is going to hit a bomb, or Alec Bregman's going to hit one into the seats. So you got to limit. You can't give extra outs. You can't give extra base runners. Game 1 in any short series is crucial. To me, it's extremely, even more crucial in this game because obviously Verlander is had a Cy Young type season. He's probably going to win it in the American League at age 39, put another line on his Hall of Fame plaque. But he's had this weird, difficulty in the World Series. He has not pitched well. He's got to the World Series, but he has not pitched well in any of his World Series starts, really. So it's got to be human nature that he wants to set the course straight. And I think you got to kind of prey on that tonight for the Phillies. And it's crucial they get off to a quick start in this game to me because you got to get Verlander early. And if you don't get him early and let him get settled in, let him build some confidence, I think that's when you get in trouble. So you have to get Verlander early and let him sit in the dugout and think, I just gave up a couple here, and oh God, here I go in the World Series again. And if you can, beat Verlander in Game 1, I think it could just demoralize the Astros a little bit, just a little bit. They can come back at you next night with, somebody just as Framber, who's just as good, or almost just as good, as having a great season, who's probably going to finish in the top 3 of the Cy Young. Framber Valdez. So game 1 really big tonight. It's big that Aaron Nola bounces back from a few mistakes in San Diego, and it's just big. Go right for the big guy on the Astros staff and try to beat him. And if you can win game 1, which they've done 3 times in this postseason, it's kind of been a good recipe. Steal one on the road and go home and kind of let those Philadelphia fans give you a big lift.
Speaking of teams that are just crushing it right now, how about Team Toyota in Langhorne, Princeton, and Glen Mills? New Toyota inventory is finally starting to come back, and yet they're still not charging over MSRP. And with over 200 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. Plus, their service centers and body shops will keep your vehicle safe all season long. You are always the MVP at Team Toyota. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Princeton, or Glen Mills. Yeah, it would change the complexion of the series for sure if the Phillies were able to win game 1. It would, remove the home field advantage from the Astros' possession, and it would have, represented the Phillies taking the Astros' best shot. So it could really make a drastic impact on the series. Justin Verlander, by the way, another reason you want to get to him early is because even at 39 years old, he can build velocity during a start. It's not uncommon for him to be like 92, 93 in the first inning and then be closer to like 96, 97 in the 6th or 7th inning. So that's another reason you got to get to him early. Jim, the Astros are undefeated in the playoffs. They swept the Mariners. They swept the Yankees. They're 7-0. They've won 9 in a row dating back to the regular season, last losing when they faced Aaron Nola that night in Houston on October 3rd. But that also means that they haven't experienced like a setback yet in the playoffs. They haven't fallen behind in a series yet. Do you think that matters at all going into this?
No, after this stage of the season where you've played, over 170 games, in the course of the season, you experience everything. They got a lot of guys with experience over there, tons of postseason experience. They got some exciting young kids. They've seen it all. They don't need, I remember reading Season on the Brink a million years ago. It's a great book about Bobby Knight and that John Feinstein book. And Knight would always like to have a tough loss late in the season to kind of refocus everybody, but I just don't think that would register with the Houston Astros. I think all things considered, they'd rather just go, 13-0 through this postseason and sweep the Phillies. And they think they can. I mean, they're really a good team. They're really playoff tested. They have great talent. They have a lot to prove because of 2017. There's still enough guys around and that were part of that tainted championship, and they want to prove to the world they can do it the right way. But I mean, they're messing with a Phillies team that has a lot of offense. They match up pretty well offensively, and the Phillies team is hot, and the Phillies team believes, and the Phillies team playing with a ton of confidence. Phillies team feels like they have something special going, and a Phillies team that is not awed by anybody after that, what they did the last 4 months and what they've done here in the postseason. I mentioned how defense is always a lingering fear. There's firepower in the Astros rotation. The Phillies strike out a lot. When you look at the league stats, I think in MLB, they're right around league average. There's a number of teams that struck out more than the Phillies, but the Phillies are prone to big strikeout games. They might go a few games they don't strike out a lot, but it seems like they're prone to that game where they strike out 13 or 14 times, and this is a Astros team that can do that to you. So I think the Phillies have to, really avoid that and focus on contact, And if a mistake presents itself, then you over the plate, then you really drive it. But because the Astros have sailed smoothly through this postseason, I don't see that as anything that will affect them negatively. In fact, it probably affects them positively that their confidence is like the Phillies. Their confidence is sky high.
Well, referencing big strikeout totals, Justin Verlander struck out 10 Phillies over 5 shutout innings back on October 4th, but not much stock can be put into that game because only a few Phillies regulars were playing. There was no Schwarber, no Real Muto, no Hoskins, no Castellanos, no Segura. Now, both of these teams, Jim, have had the same layoff. Both teams wrapped up the championship series on Sunday and then had 4 days off before this game one. I guess the difference is that the Astros have already had one of these long layoffs because the fact that they had home field wrapped up, they were the top seed in the American League. They were resting guys by the final week, pulling them in and out of games. They had time off before their ALDS series against the Mariners begun. Is there any reason you think that the Phillies would be negatively affected by this 4-day layoff?
I don't think so. I just think adrenaline kicks in and takes over. So I don't think it's going to affect them. I mean, I think they needed a little rest. They're on the road for like 3 weeks. They had this frenzied schedule, and then they had a celebration on Sunday night. I think they needed a little recovery time. Maybe it was like 1 day too much in a perfect world. But I think adrenaline will kick in, and in the end, I think the rest will do them good. I guess if I had one question, it would be about Nola coming on, 8 full days rest, or is it 9 full days rest?
Well, it will have been 9 days since he last pitched. So October 28th, game one. His last start was October 19th.
Right. So that's, pitchers are really creatures of routine. They like to be out there every 5th day. Now, I know Wheeler and Nola pitch well on an extra day's rest, and when you're into October, certainly an extra day's rest can help you, I think. But now when you're talking 2 or 3, that's getting out of the routine. But it's just the nature of the beast. So that would be my big question on the layoff, is whether it affects Aaron Nola adversely, because I still look at Aaron Nola. You look at Aaron Nola. He probably had his best fastball of the season against San Diego, right? He was popping at 94 and still some 95s. And, back in 1988, you're like, oh, my God, that's really bringing it. Well, those are like average now. Everybody throws that hard. So I don't look at him as a classic power pitcher. I think he can throw an occasional power pitch. But I look at Aaron Nola as a pitcher, maybe not a finesse guy, but a guy who has finesse in his repertoire, a guy who has a little power in his repertoire, but just a guy who pitches, and a guy who relies on feel. The sinker, the cutter, the breaking ball, the changeup, locate, get two-way movement down in the zone, kind of old school pitching there, two-way movement down in the zone, occasionally ride one up above the bat head and locate it well. That's what happened in San Diego. He did not do that. When he tried to ride a fastball, it wasn't up, boom, where they couldn't get it. It was more like in the, kill zone there. So I still think there's enough feel and finesse in his game that I wonder if the layoff will hurt him. But I am sure that he has done between starts work to combat that. A couple strenuous bullpens. And it's the World Series. It's the World Series. There are no excuses. If you're healthy and you're ready to go, trust your talent, trust what got you here, and go let it all hang out. And I believe he will do that tonight. I also believe that Aaron Nola has an inner fire to him. He's one of the most soft-spoken guys in that clubhouse. He's kind of aw shucks, but I think deep down inside that kid, a fire burns. I really do. And that loss in San Diego, I think it gnaws at him for a lot of reasons. I mean, one, he was coming off that great stretch, and then it kind of, thud. He was beaten by his brother's team. It became a big narrative. And I just think when I looked at him after that game, I think the thing that disappointed him most was he felt like he'd let the team down, the guys in the clubhouse. I really sensed the anguish in the look on his face that he had just let his team down. And I think he wants nothing more in the world than to build his team up tonight and carry his team after that performance. So that inner fire burns in him. We'll see how it translates tonight. And I just think all of that will maybe has a chance to supersede the layoff. We'll see.
Well, a guy whose inner fire is always worn on his sleeve for us all to see is Bryce Harper, who's had just a remarkable playoff run here, Jim. It's not quite the run that Carlos Beltran went in 2004 when he hit all those home runs, but you look at this Bryce Harper playoff run based on production and the clutch moments. I mean, it measures up to playoffs that Manny Ramirez or David Ortiz or Barry Bonds have had. It's really becoming a historic run that Harper's on. He had been in 4 playoff series prior to this, and only one of them had been successful, but he's clearly locked in right now. He's going the other way. He's shortening his swing within an at-bat. He's a guy who seems to like he's able to adjust within an at-bat, which is uncommon for a guy who has that much power. We were at Minute Maid Park yesterday for the Phillies workout. I looked over at one point and I saw you talking to Reggie Jackson. You ended up writing an article for NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com. Everybody wants to watch Bryce Harper, huh?
Yeah, Reggie works for the Astros. He's rooting for the Astros. He has a vested interest, but he's Mr. October, 18 postseason home runs, and I think Bryce Harper has 10. Bryce has always risen to the occasion in the postseason, and he's doing it here in 2022, his first World Series run. I think he's got 5 home runs and 11 RBIs. So a lot of people call him kind of the new Mr. October. I guess enough time has passed when the world is looking for a new Mr. October, but there'll only be one of them, Reggie Jackson. And he says he marvels a little bit at Bryce Harper, the way he rises to the occasion, what a great player he is. But he says he's really only watched him a little bit in spring training and mostly on TV. He's looking forward to seeing him here. As he said, this is where it really counts. This is where reputations are made. This is where championships are won. And he has a lot of respect for Bryce Harper, but he does work for the Astros. But he is a Philadelphian, a native of the area. I think we all know that. Grew up in Wyncote, star athlete, Cheltenham High before going to Arizona State. And I just like talking to him. He saw his first game at Connie Mack Stadium. And I think he said 56 when Jackie Robinson was still playing. And he said he saw Jackie Robinson hit a home run there. So I actually went through the game logs, and Jackie Robinson did hit a home run in Connie Mack Stadium that season. So that must have been the game Reggie was at. And Jackie Robinson was his favorite player. And so that's, I wish I could have seen Jackie Robinson play. But Reggie, he's looking forward to seeing Bryce Harper, and he said he's looking forward to getting home to Philadelphia on Monday night for Game 3. I'm sure you'll see a lot of that during the broadcast. The camera will pan over to Reggie when Mr. October, when Bryce Harper comes up. Both of those guys know how to put on a show, and they seem to light up when the camera's around. And a lot of people light up when the cameras are around, but they don't often perform, right? These guys, they light up when the camera's around, and then they light up in their performance. So that's when you're really something great. When the eyes of the world are looking at you and you really deliver. Slow that heartbeat down, and boom. I mean, that home run Bryce Harper hit, everybody's still talking about it. You still hearing about it?
Yeah, pretty much every day. I'm still getting videos sent to me of it, of different angles from the crowd. This was my mom's reaction. This is my grandpa. So it's still something that is sticking with Phillies fans. Jim, one of the other storylines of this World Series is the managers. You have Dusty Baker, who's been involved in professional baseball since the mid '60s. You have Rob Thompson, who's also has decades in the game. 1985 is when his minor league career began. So one way or the other, Dusty Baker is either going to get over the hump and finally win a World Series, or the improbable story of Rob Thompson going from bench coach to interim manager to officially being the manager with a chance to win it all in his first season. It's going to be a pretty cool deal either way. There's a lot of people that are huge fans of both guys, which I've just noticed throughout this playoff run, all these national writers, people from past stops who want to catch up with Rob Thompson and just talking to him about how this has all come together, unexpectedly for a guy who may have even, closed the door on potentially being a manager prior to this season.
I think he did kind of close the door. He was very much at peace in where he was at, being a bench coach. Sometimes, it's hard to go looking for love. Sometimes love just finds you. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's some quotes out there, maybe from Shakespeare, that are a lot more smooth than that. But you know what I'm saying? Sometimes, it just happens, and that's what the best kind. And that's what's happened with Rob Thompson. He wasn't expecting it to happen, and what a great story over 4 months. Just the fact that, a clubhouse full of young men, some making $300 million plus, superstars who've done magnificent things in this game. And then kids who are working their way up. They all believe in you, trust in you, or hitch their wagon to you. That's got to be heady stuff for Rob Thompson, but he has not lost 1 ounce of his humility. I think that's one of the things that makes him great. It's one of the reasons guys buy into him, because he is so humble. I've said this before, he feels like he has an underdog quality, and I think that clubhouse wants to come through for him, much like the clubhouse a decade plus ago wanted to come through for another underdog named Charlie Manuel. So win, lose, or draw, it's still a great story for Rob Thompson. It would be even better one if he rides down Broad Street. And Dusty Baker, to me, is already was a Hall of Famer. I've dealt with him a number of times over the years. It's just a real class man, much like Rob Thompson, a class man. And if Dusty wins the World Series, to me, it should just be another line on a Hall of Fame plaque that should already be coming. So same for Dave Dombrowski. I think he was there already too.
Well, this 4-day wait that probably felt closer to 4 months for Phillies fans, it's finally over. We got game 1 tonight. It's Aaron Nola against Justin Verlander. There's a sense that the Phillies are playing with house money because of how random this has all been. But like we said, if they're able to steal game 1 as they did in St. Louis, as they did in Atlanta, as they did in San Diego, expectations for the series could change drastically. So big game 1, Nola and Verlander. We'll catch you tomorrow morning with another Phillies Talk podcast.